you have no choice. Have you ever backed yourself up into a corner where you had no choice but to succeed? You had to find a way? They say necessity is the mother of invention. Huntington has been backed in the corner. We're the only city in the state of West Virginia, the only city in the state of West Virginia to be fined for not following through on its program, on the stormwater program. You know how embarrassing that is? You know, from Milton. Milton has one. Milton has done it. Hurricane has done it. I don't know if Cerrito has done it. I don't think they have. I know Canoa is working on something. The fact of the matter is, we've got to do something. So let me explain where we are. We had the ordinance introduced, with my background while I was in the legislature, even though it was 20-some years ago, I still want to call something that's being proposed a bill. So, but the ordinance, so if you hear me say a bill, I'm just synapsing back to some dead brain cells here. The ordinance that was introduced, after I had a chance to go around and meet with different neighborhood groups, churches, business leaders, business people, and as I got close to it, I was talking again to the council members. We had the votes to pass this thing. We had the votes to pass it. However, my job isn't to pass something. My job is to get something done. And not have unintended consequences. But we've got to get something done. So what we did is I had an opportunity to meet with some members of City Council, and lo and behold, some of them were a little confused. They weren't saying, we don't think you can do this, but there was some uncertainty. And if I have that kind of uncertainty, Donetta hasn't sat in on these meetings, but I'm sure she's heard. When I get my staff together, I expect us to be right on top of things. Be ready to respond. Know what we're going to do. And if I find any level of uncertainty, we haven't done our job. And I have absolutely no problem with stepping up to council and saying, give it back to me. We haven't completed our work. That, in essence, is what I was asking City Council last Monday night. Give it back to me. There's some problems that we haven't worked through here. Councilman Ball and I just left a meeting on March for Martin Luther King Day and a Martin Luther King Jr. ceremony. And it struck me and bothers me that I'm noticing something happening in this town in the last few weeks that hasn't been here for the last year. It's been here before, but I thought we were turning away from it. All of a sudden, there was a little bit of a nastiness that was developing. Y'all been getting some calls? Having some leaflets left on your door? Kind of making it sound like something sinister is being done to you. Those of you who've been coming to these meetings, all the years I was on City Council and many years before when I was in the legislature, my family would come down. That's not what Westmoreland's about.
Oh my God.
It's not to say that you all will say what's on your mind. If there's not something sinister, I'm determined. We're not going to go down that path. I'm not going to go down that path. we've got a problem that we've got to figure out. So when I said to City Council, please give it back to me, I indicated to them that I had an intention of something that I was developing. A work group made up of some of the largest companies in town, organizations in town. Well, those are Steel of West Virginia, Cabell Huntington Hospital, St. Mary's Hospital, Marshall University, the Chamber of Commerce, just on the business side. Make sure that we have pastors and neighborhoods represented. And the reason that I wanted those big groups involved, Marshall has to have their own stormwater program that they've had to implement. I want their insight. Steel of West Virginia not only competes against other steel companies, but they have to compete against other companies in their own company as to whether money is going to be invested in that company or another steel plant somewhere. I need their insight. Hospitals need to know, need to bring to us their knowledge of how this is handled with other hospitals elsewhere. But the intent is that if I bring this group back together to talk with me about what we're going to do as we start to develop a plan, and I mentioned this before, is that by slowing down, not stopping, by slowing down, we can make sure that we aren't developing something with unintended consequences. So, if you're wanting to know where we are and what we're proposing, we're starting over. I've got to show something to the DEP, and I've got to show something to the US EPA that we're moving forward. But if you don't take anything away from this meeting, take this, if you would. You will constantly hear me talking about, and I've said it several times tonight, we've got to find a way to address our street flooding and the basement flooding. I was told by the regulators, the DEP and the US EPA, if you stop your flooding problem, you've addressed our concerns. So as soon as I heard that, it became real apparent to me. We've got one task: stop the flooding. Now let me promise you, even if I get sick at the end of 3 years and I start taking, well, you all get sick of me and I take sick leave in the end of 3 years and I don't come back, at least we'll have a plan in place. If you all stick with me for 11 more years, we still will have just begun the task. But let's face it, 10 years ago when this thing first came up, or last came up, if the city had just decided to move forward, we'd be 10 years ahead of where we are right now. Some have said and criticized what we were proposing, saying, well, none of the flooding was going to be addressed. Well, yeah. Because we're just starting to build something, to plan something. You wouldn't, actually, if I came in and I said, we're going to start fixing the flooding, and the flooding will be done in 2 years, 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue, or any of the viaducts, the flooding would have been in 2 years, then there would have been those coming in lying, criticizing me, well, he's lying, he's just misleading us, you can't do it that fast.